Good morning. On Saturday here, I met an American girl. I got talking to her because I was expecting a French girl to check in. But when she showed up, I said to her, "Are you French?" And she said, "No, I'm American." And we got to talking. And she has a degree, a journalism degree. So, and she edits dissertations for foreign students that are studying in the universities here and everywhere else. So she's well used to the level of conversation that I like to converse at. So my level of perception. So we were able to have a chat, and she was in town for a philosophy discussion, and the theme for the discussion was love, insights, and wisdom. So she asked me would I like to come along, and I was only too happy to go along because it was in a nearby hotel here in town, and I was only too happy to go along because oh, I was like I'd been brought in like a dog straining at the leash. But uh, yeah, I had no money for beer because nobody saw any value in my videos to give me any money for beer. But that's okay. There's one or two things is going to happen. Either you're going to see value in these videos or I'm going to see value in these videos, one or the other, but we'll see how things go. But regardless of having no money for beer, I still went. I didn't need beer. And we began the discussion. The main protagonists were a philosophy professor and a psychologist. And it later turned out that the psychologist had been a student of the philosophy professor for Wittgenstein alone. Wittgenstein now would be the philosophy of language. But for Wittgenstein alone, he had been the student of the professor. And they had a great command of English. They had a great command of English, and they were well able to, they were very skillful in using it. But I was still able to refute their arguments and with rebuttals using my coarse and crude language. But I started off by saying, I think the first thing we ought to do is define our terms. Because in order to have a discussion about anything, we should first define our terms in order that we can all be singing off the same hymn sheet. Not having you having one concept of idea and me having another. Because I said we have to first agree on our concept, by defining our terms, our concept of love, our concept of insights, our concept of various things. And I learned this from Plato. So I said to the philosophy professor, "What's your concept of I?" And I said to the psychologist, "What's your concept of mind?" Now, the philosophy professor said, "Well, I'm a self." And I said to myself, "And yes, and is that as far as it goes? You are a self?" And he said, "Well, basically, yeah." And I said, "I don't really believe in uh, I suppose we could call him agnostic because he wasn't going to, he was saying like, yes, there might be something, but we don't know what it is. So there was no direct saying, I believe in God or anything else. But I suppose this is one way of not clinging to beliefs. But at the same time, the whole point of philosophy is seeking to understand as far as I'm concerned. And what's the point in, okay, I'd be flexible with my beliefs, but I'll change them if anybody can show me what I'm saying or doing is wrong, because I only seek the truth, and that'll cause no one any harm. What causes the harm is to continue in your delusions. That's what causes the harm. But so then anyway, but there's enough argument. You study enough philosophy. This is why I was suggesting to him that I would suggest now that you go and, well, he was, as I said, he was a lecturer he was a philosopher, philosophy lecturer in the college. But at the same time that the psychologist only saw fit, the only psychology, the philosophy that the psychologist needed was Wittgenstein. In other words, this was how to construct an argument. In other words, to do the very same as what Peterson does, to assert yourself as an authority and be able to say a lot without saying much at all. But in order to be able to write a narrative, like art, for the same thing is art, to be able to construct an argument or be able to construct a narrative to make people feel foolish and make them feel inferior and accept you as an authority on the subject, and then you impose your will. But this is psychology, and I'll explain this in a minute. So then I said to the psychologist, what's your concept of mind? And the psychologist went on. Now he gave me, I can't repeat his argument because I tell you it was fairly flowery, like it was a lot of technical jargon, like, but it was Wittgenstein, it was sophistry, but I was able to understand it, because even though I can use this, but I prefer to be me. I prefer to be me and talk as I see fit, even though it has often been like even the other night I used the word shagged. Most of them are all shocking horror. But they said, what did they say? What did they say? Shagged. Did they say shagged? And it was, yeah, shagged. But anyway, where was I? Pick back up again. Yeah, so I said, what's your concept of mind? And he gave out this full flowery whole thing, and I said to him, yeah, but that's the function of the brain that you're presenting to me there. I said, that's the function of the brain that you're talking about. I said, for example, I said, that's a television. I said, but the film that's on that television is not the television. It's completely separate from the television. You know what I'm saying? So he was describing the television, but he wasn't. He was describing the function of the brain and the function of the brain, but he wasn't describing the mind. So I said to him, like, that may be your concept of mind, but this is the function of the brain that you're describing, and as far as I'm concerned, mind is a completely separate thing. And I did go on to extrapolate my concept of mind, but anyway, I don't have time for this. But the reason I had to do this, and the reason why this was so important to me, that we start with the concept of I and the concept of mind, is because, as my mother used to say to me, if you don't love yourself, how can you expect anyone else to love you? Now, if I was back again with having the understanding that I have now, my reply would be to my mother is I don't expect anyone to love me. I have no expectations in that regard whatsoever. Now, but anyway, that's what Mammy used to say to me. So I was reared with this, like, you know, if you don't love yourself, how can you expect anyone else to love you? Now, in order for me to love myself, I had to do an awful lot of work on myself, physically and mentally. And the culmination of that, like, let me tell you, I started with the physical thing, but the physical work was not enough. It was not enough. I had to work on the mind, including my soul, teaching me I'm not my hair, I'm not my body, but that's a full philosophical discussion, and I absolutely don't have time for that. But the reason this is so important is, as I pointed out to everybody at the discussion, is that if you don't know yourself, as in like you don't know yourself, how can you love yourself? You can't love yourself. You can only have a subjective concept of yourself that's far removed from the objective truth, from the objective you, from what you actually are. All you have is a subjective concept, and therefore all you have is an illusion, and illusions don't work. And the problem is then that you have to continuously look for support in this delusion. In other words, you have to buy fancy clothes, fancy sunglasses, fancy gear. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this. I too, if I was given the opportunity, would be a sharp dressed man, but it absolutely doesn't bother me to wear this, because I'm most certainly, whatever I am, I'm most certainly not my clothes. But I don't need to look for support in an illusion. And then you see it comes back around to that if you only love a subjective concept of yourself, which is a delusion, and delusions don't work, it then comes to the question of that you need love. Now, if you need love, it comes back again to what will you do for this love? What will you do for this love? Well, psychology will teach you exactly what you have to do for this love. Because even though they teach authenticity, how you have to be authentic, and they shoot this shit down your throat 24/7, be authentic, but yet they teach you everything that causes you to be inauthentic. People won't like you if you do this. People won't like you if you behave this way. You can't be successful if you act this way, because people have to like you for to be successful. They have to see value in you. In order for you to be successful, people have to like you. So you have to behave in this way. You have to behave this way. This is how you be successful. This is how, create friends and influence people. Yeah, make friends and influence people. And what was the other one as well? Napoleon Hill and Dale Carnegie. I call it America's contribution to philosophy, and it's fairly weak. But anyway, the positive thinking philosophy, I call it. But basically, this is supporting a delusion. All based on the foundation is all wrong, because you don't know yourself, and then how can you love yourself? So it must start with row over the temple at Delphi, know thyself, know thyself, know thyself. And that, I said, if you were to, I said, read Hegel, instead of your sophistry, I said, you will have a better understanding of yourself, not I but we, not two but three. Now we then went into that argument of not I but we, not two but three, and we started to but I can break that down for him very easily. Like, for example, I said, dialectics start in the mind, and he said to me, oh, that's the Hegelian dialectics, but Plato's dialectics is discussion. It's discussion. And I said, it's exactly what we're doing here now, I said to him. It's thesis, which is the two protagonists, the psychologist, the philosophy professor, the thesis, the antithesis, and obviously the synthesis was what we agreed on as a conclusion, because they both found it very hard. Even though I was able to refute their arguments, they found it very difficult to refute mine. Well, couldn't refute mine. Sure, how could they? Like that's irrefutable. Like sure, it makes perfect sense. If you don't know yourself, how can you love yourself? And it then turned out to be fucking true, because the illusion started to collapse, because the psychologist actually turned out, because we went downstairs after the discussion to a piano, where we all stood around the piano, and the psychologist and Miss America took turns playing the piano, and we sang songs. But he was very concerned with the perception of others, and very low confidence in himself. But yet, when we gave him a glass of wine and we encouraged him to that, and reassured him that we very much enjoy and appreciate his singing, he was a lovely singer, a very good singer, and a very, very good piano player. But of course, he got better once he started to become more confident in himself. So he actually has low confidence. So despite having a degree in psychology and going on and now beginning a master's in psychology, he had low confidence in himself. And why has he low confidence in himself? Because he doesn't love himself, and he can't love himself unless he knows himself. And this comes back again to the breakdown. And as I said, dialectics start with the mind. But this is the same as Mr. Ego, Mr. Nature back in Plovdiv. When I said to him, when he said, I am the cigarette smoke, I am this and this, well, who do you talk to then? If you're the universe, I said, who do you talk to? Because I know who I talk to. But dialectics start with the mind. Thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So we are the synthesis. But for example, Hobbes called the mind a perpetual war. Now, in order to be a war, there has to be at least two. Because believe it or not, even if you have a civil war, there has to be two. There has to be two sides that go to war. There has to be a minimum of two sides to go to war. And then Goethe said, who was another great thinker, Johann Wolfgang Goethe, is it? Goethe. You'll know Goethe is, look him up. But Goethe said the mind is like a finely strung bow, like a tightly strung bow, pulling in both directions. Now I say the mind doesn't have to be like this, and once you actually understand the mind, so once you start to know yourself, it's then, as Seneca suggested, all about getting the orchestra of the mind to play in harmony. Now, psychology does not teach you this, how to get the orchestra of the mind to play in harmony. Well, there's two ways to get the orchestra of the mind to play in harmony. Number one, align your opinions with the transformations of the universe. Now, for this, you have to understand the universe, you have to learn to think like the universe, act like the universe, and you have to be able to, to say that I have no opinion on anything is to, again, a delusion. But if you align your opinions with the transformations of the universe, you first of all have to understand nature. And the basic understanding that you're a part of nature and cannot be separate from nature. And then you can start to understand yourself. And then you can love yourself. And love nature. And love everything. And everybody. Because I'm not Yeah, do you get my idea? Otherwise, what you have is an illusion. Now, I want to talk about something else as well, because we had a great discussion on erotic bonding, specifically on the generals and the soldiers in the Spartan army. But for those of you who can't understand this, maybe Ragnar Lothbrok and Lagertha would be a better example for you. But I may talk about this tomorrow. Bye.